have an introduction to one of the most difficult concepts that because we're so used to it, we don't even appreciate it's the issues with it and the depth of it and so on. And that is the parsha of Nevuah. Nevuah, we take for granted. We grow up, Maminim, we grow up with Nevi'im, we grow up with the Torah, which is all Nevuah and so on. And therefore it's very, very simple for us, the concept of Nevuah. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim talks a lot about it. And all Rishonim, Rosh has places and so on, where they struggle with the concept of HaKadosh Baruch Hu communicating with a person. I mean, it's easy for us to imagine a voice coming out and saying, do this, don't do that, don't do the other thing. We don't have a problem with that. But communication is a lot more than a voice. It's something coming from a language beyond. Even words are already a concretization. It's taking something beyond and bringing it down here. And it's not something simple at all. The Rambam, when he describes in Mishnah Torah, he describes Nevuah, and Nevuah is a transcendent experience. It was something that people had to stop being people to some degree. They lost connection with their body, and they communicated with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you couldn't be in your body and the body understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If I can I'll give an example just to understand what it's like. Baruch Hashem, computers can do a lot of things. And we can program computers with the issue of how to get from here to Yerushalayim in the quickest way when you have all these people coming, and a good algorithm will solve it for you. We did not have a good algorithm, but if there was a good algorithm, it would solve it. It's not a problem. But if you ask a computer, what does it mean to love somebody? What is the just and right thing to do in this situation? The problem is not that the computer got programmed for it. The problem is that a piece of metal has nothing in it that corresponds to just, kind, love, beauty. It's two different worlds. It corresponds to roads. It can tell me how many cars and how old the road and all these things. It's material to material. Concepts that transcend material essence, such as justice, beauty, etc., cannot be translated. So what does it mean Advar Hashem is translated to us? It's an issue that it's far invested with. Each one is a different way. This last week, we had the first time where HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to man in a way that becomes part of our knowledge and our Torah. The nevuahs to the others were their private affair. They did not become our Torah. We don't know anything about it. It wasn't given to us to learn. What we learn is from the Maisa of us. Moshe Rabbeinu is the Navi. Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah is the root of all nevuah, and therefore that's the nevuah we learn from. So therefore this first time there has nevuah comes with tremendous significance in understanding what nevuah is. It says, he saw, Vayomer Moshe, Asura na be'eres amar gol hazeh, madua lo yivar hasneh. It says, Vayer lo malach Hashem elo b'lavas eish b'toch hasneh, Vayar, v'hine sneh bor be'eish, aseh ne'ukol, Asura na be'era, Vayar Hashem tisar liros, v'ikol v'alekim b'toch hasneh, Vayomer Moshe v'hinei. So, the Rabbi Bechaya explains that there were 3 steps in the process. He saw a fire with his eyes of flesh and blood. The fire that was in the snare was a real fire, and that fire itself was a physical being, a physical entity. He saw it, and he and responded to it. So the first step of his vision was a physical vision. The second step was a malach. And that Rabbi Ahron says he saw with his ein haseichel. In other words, there are concepts. When I tell somebody, I see what you mean, that metaphor is an expression of I understand what you're saying to be as real as something that I would see with my own eyes. So I see a tree. When someone tells me an idea that I buy into, I say, I see what you mean. And that's called ein haseichel. It's a term that's used. It's used by other Rishonim also in different cases. It means the eye of the mind, and it's conceptual understanding. And finally, the third step was, HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to him, and that he says is the Mara HaNevuah. That's already beyond Seichel, and that's something that is Mara HaNevuah. So Rabbi Chaya says a mashal, when you walk out of a dark room and you were to see a bright light, that light would blind you and would not enlighten you. You can't handle that amount of light. There's no way in which a person can go from being flesh and blood to understanding HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it goes with madregas. First, there is a physical, visual object. Then there is an understanding, which is not physical, but it's humanly cognitive. And then you come to something which transcends human understanding, but a person has a chelik elokai. A Jew has in himself a nekuda that transcends understanding, and with that, he connects to Nevuah. That's what Rabbi Chaya says. It's remarkable that there are other Rishonim that speak about it, and in many ways it seems as if they all are part of the same picture. There's a sefer from the Rashba, Rashba's a Talmud, sorry. It's called Torah Samincha. Rabbi Yaakov Sakiri, it's a sefer on Chumash. It's drushes. It's Kabbalic ideas, but it's explained. In other words, it's not a Kabbalah sefer, but he uses those ideas more frequently and very enlightening sefer on many points. And he says, Gishal nalechem al raglecha, ki hamokom sha'ir lo kodesh, means that he told him, at this point, remove your physical approach and focus on the pneumatic approach. In other words, and so he doesn't say the rest of it, but I'm sort of understanding it with Rabbi Chaya. The first step was a necessary first step of seeing something physical. The second step was necessary to use human seichel and chakira. And finally, he said, from this point onwards, chakira is too coarse of a tool to use for this. It's just like a shoe is a very rough garment, so to speak. It treads on the mud. It's coarse. It's not refined enough. Sha'al na'alecha means get rid, he says, of your gashmistic understanding and so on and so forth. That's what he adds over here. The Ikrin, Rosh Albo, lived at the end of the Spanish Kufa, very famous sefer, HaYeshiva sefer, reads it into the pasuk of it says that Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, Vayasta Moshe Panav, Ki Yoreh Mehabit Elokim, that Moshe Rabbeinu hid his face. He didn't want to, so to speak, look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol. What does it mean? So he says he was scared that if his eyes would be working, then his thinking would be too megushim, and therefore closing his eyes and hiding his face allowed him to see it just through a very Rupnistic experience. His words, but I think it's the same. In other words, what I understand from all these Rishonim together is as follows. There are gradations that start with purely physical, work their way up to something that is beyond anything human, even seichel. And at the final step, any vestiges of that first approach takes away, and it's something that obstructs. I think this is also true. The Rambam says that every time a Navi had Nevuah, two things would come together. There would be a Nevuah, a Mara, there would be a vision, and then there would be a Pisrin. There would be a caption explaining what that vision is about. So it's really something puzzling because if you're telling the Navi bottom line what you got to do, what's the picture for? When you speak to Boronians, you need entertainment. So you have pictures, you have stories, you have a shalom. I mean, a Navi sees a Nevuah. He gets in the book of Rosh. Rosh tells him, tell the Jews, you're doing Averis, you ought to do tshuva, or else this is going to happen. That's a message. Why does he need to have a makal shkedim? Why does he need to have all the visions that we know? Why does everything need to have a ladder? Tell him, bottom line, what it is, and that's that. Ram doesn't say. Ram just says that that's every Navi. A Navi does not make a mistake as to what the Nevuah was because he gets the Mara and he gets the Pisri. I would think, Ram doesn't explain it, but I would think it's the same idea. Every Nevuah goes from a certain physical reality, and a picture is much more physical than information. You see something, and the caption is a step above it. It's the information put into words. Every Nevuah in itself also is a mini progression from the more physical to an understanding. I think that would be a way to understand that phenomenon. That's true about Nevuah. And if anybody's holding by being a Navi, you don't need me, and that's not why I'd like to talk about it. I'd like to understand this in light of, I guess, an issue that sort of has come to fore in recent years. We have different ways of understanding Torah, or better said, the context within which to understand Torah. One is a down-to-earth, maybe rational context. The Torah is all about being a good person, a mensch, a just person, and so on. And Torah can be explained in ways in which it makes a person better, and in which makes society much more viable society. Rosh does that. He's very focused on society and talks about that a lot. And Torah has a lot of that hesed. We also have a very mystical type of approach, which is all about kunim and spiros and different things going on beyond, with almost a belittlement of the other type. You think the Torah really cares, Keziah says that, but they're very big kunim going on, with spiros and all sorts of things going on. So, what's the role of each one of these? The Gedolei Yisrael over the generations had different approaches. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, when he explains Time and Mitzvahs, very down-to-earth different approaches. The Arizal and the Goyen, and they all talk about other things. How do we understand it? I'd like to add another point to that mix. There's a story reported of Rav Salanta, one of the reliable sources. Someone asked him about learning Kabbalah, and he said, what do I care where Malach Michoel is standing, and Malach Gabriel? I need to know that if I do good, Kadosh is happy, and if I do bad, there's going to be consequences. So did Rav Salanta wipe off the map, the Arizal, the Goyim, and everything else with it. I mean, the type of people that were involved in these Inyanim were, the giants. How do you understand the two different approaches? So I want to talk from a personal, meaning not the grand scheme. Talk about a person. A person always starts with himself, and understanding starts. A child understands in stages. A child starts seeing the world around him. He touches things, he moves things, he licks things, he does things with things. And our first approach to understanding things is physical. I cannot skip that step, because when I start talking about ideas, when I don't know what those things are, then I really don't know what I'm talking about. People who've never worked out physical things in a lab or with a telescope, and they talk about grand ideas, grand schemes of all sorts of, warping of time, space, into that. It's good for a science fiction movie. It's got nothing to do with understanding. There's no understanding there because they never felt it, they never saw it. They don't know what they're talking about. Literally, the word what? The world of Torah and mitzvahs is a very physical world. And a person who hasn't tasted matzah or maror doesn't, you have the fanciest ideas, he's not there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us understanding starts with the tangible and palpable. When a person grows up, he begins to be able to understand ideas, things that are not tangible as such, but they are a concept that deal with it. We believe that when a person goes a step further than that, he can understand beyond the concepts that human cognition can get to. So skipping the first step of understanding mitzvahs in terms of making a person a good person, whether it's good in terms of kindness, whether it's good in terms of personal kedusha, whether it's good in terms of yasher, that is the outlet. The Sulam Mutzav Arza is where it starts for us. A person who traps HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our world is cutting off the second part of the ladder, because it means all Torah is a guidebook for living a nice civil life, and that's it. Where's Hashem in the picture? So to cut it at that point means a person is shrinking Torah, and much more than shrinking Torah, he's cutting it off from a certain root. Then it's just a question of my ideas for good society versus your ideas for good society. So we'll assume Hashem maybe is smarter than me and has better ideas. But then, at the bottom line, we made it something very small and very enclosed. Within the context of this world lies a gateway to another world. And inside that world lies a gateway to another world. So the progression is correct, but you cannot skip a step, because there's no way to get to the second step before the first step, and no way to get the third step before the second step. Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe Rabbeinu. By Yaakov, everything, he was born and he was already a shining star, but in his progression to understanding of a course, it had to start with a little fire. A fire makes a certain impression on a person. It morphed into a mala, which is still, it's within the realm of human reachability in terms of seichel, in a seichel, and it ended up with beyond, and with nevuah. So the progression for a person, understanding the role of both worlds. And now I think was Rabbi Shaul Salanter's point. He said, if you're going to start playing, if the reason why I'm giving tzedakah is because certain tikkunim are being made in certain worlds in certain ways. What about the poor guy who's hungry over there? If the mitzvah skips that step, then I'm starting in Shemayim. It's like it's building a floor starting from the 10th floor up. What's it standing on? It's not standing on anything good. But limiting it and understanding the Rebbeinu Shalom's Torah as just being the bubble that we live in, not more, not less, then we're in a certain sense captivating it. We're decapitating it. We're sort of cutting off the head of it. As a person progresses in understanding, he starts with the bottom and moves up higher and higher. So it's true about Nebuah, but more so it's true about Torah. It's true for every person. Whenever we look at the world of Ruchnius, to have a ladder that is on the ground, we need to be grounded. And we need to have the step. Why is it necessary for me to do X, Y, and Z? How is this mitzvah change me and make me a better person, different person, and so on? And then I move the next step, and the next step, and the next step. The progression is infinite because the road has strokes. But understanding the correct connection between the two, understanding why it is that you can't skip the step of the reality we start with, and we can't cut the ladder at where we're holding. Somebody told me he had a yeshiva, his father had a yeshiva in England during the war years. You know, students for food and fun. He had a German boy. They had the Kindertanzball, so there was a German young boy there. I don't know how old he was. He wasn't very old. And the boy was there, and one day he just disappeared. Didn't know what happened to him. And well, a few weeks later, he's back in Yeshiva. So Rabbi Cohen, the first name, Rabbi Cohen, not one from Gates, this is someone else, a small Yeshiva, asked him what happened, like, where were you? Like, my height, what happened? He told him, I heard something from the Rav that got me very upset, and I decided Torah can't be true. And after thinking about it a few weeks, I came to the realization that Torah is smart, and I came back. So I said, what was it? So we learned the halacha that if you have one pillow, then you have to give it to the Eved. You and the Eved, you have one pillow, it has to be, you can't be better than him. So I said, that's absolute nonsense, and I left. They said, okay, and how did you, what was your hakara? I thought about it. And he said, the Torah is telling you, you spend it. You have money for only one pillow, and you waste money on the Eved, you deserve to lose the pillow. So, he took HaKadosh Baruch Hu and put him in a little Yakisha cup, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was boxed into that little box. We do it also. We tend to take it down to us. The Torah and understanding Das Elokim is a lifetime growth, and it's besides the volume of knowledge and the hekir, it also is the how far up the ladder in understanding the ruchnistic world and the gashmistic world. If a person starts with himself and understands Torah first and foremost, takes a person and cuts out of him Tzelem Elokim on the most basic level. And then as we grow, we understand the depth of it. Both of these understandings, both of these types of understandings are a must. To ask what's more important, the ladder, the top part or the bottom part, one without the other is useless no matter what. If you have a ladder that doesn't reach where you want to get to, or a ladder that it reaches where you want to get to, but you can't get to it, it basically means nothing. An understanding of Elikus that skips most important beginning, which is you and your immediate spiritual needs, means you'll never get. You'll talk about the Tikkunim and spheres all day long, and it's meaningless. On the other hand, if you box it in, and it's your little world, that's all, you basically have cut yourself off from going, yes, the Aleph base, yes, where you are. Together, it's a sulam that thinks of Arza, Rosh. We spoke about maybe talking, discussing the Talmidim a little bit. We have some time a little bit. So, if any, yes, introduce us. What's your name? Where are you from? Yeah. Okay. So the Mochaim world consists of many, many, many people. So just like as I'm asking, what does the Monotheist world think about Mochaim world? I don't think there's been a statement put out. I think a lot of people have different opinions, and I think the same thing. I think it's a society, and to be able to, in general, people speak about where do you stand this now. If you're talking about political parties, they're official. They have a structure. They have a board. They put out a platform. They support a platform. You don't have people. So the feeling, some people feel very strongly that people who do things differently. Some people see differently. So it really depends on the person. It's not, there's no movement called Haredi or Modern Orthodox that has a platform and declare what they do. So, it depends. So you just talk about what Ruben said, what Shimon said, what Levi said, what Yehuda said. Yeah. Yes. What's your name? Lopiansky was a father. Yeah. Okay. And your uncle was in our first class 25 years ago, and he actually was in the high school also. So, okay, yes. Such a yichus.
I'm just curious, she was talking about dancing and understanding Torah.
Yes.
So for us, I guess how much should we be focused into using sources from Kabbalah, and what are the sources that are maybe accessible or understandable that don't require the whole all of the world and technical Kabbalah?
So generally speaking, there are two genres of song like that. Three actually. There is the Hasidic Sfarim. The Hasidic Sfarim took from Kabbalah, but tried to digest in other terms. The sefer that I think is the best in that area, most accessible, and would be Rabbi Dalia. I just found that to be, it's Rabbi Dalia Shor, he was Yeshiva Rabbi Das. He was into Hasidus, chewed it up, gave it over in ways which I think any reasonably intelligent person understands. And the flow of it and the feel of it, what are the ideas that are being expressed, come from, filter down from that world. The Goyen's Kabbalah itself is very rough. In other words, the Goyen itself just basically makes it's the same way it doesn't in everywhere else. He basically says this is connected, this is this. He has a Talmud of a Talmud, the Yitzhak Isaac Chava, who some of his Sfarim are extremely accessible. He has on the Haggadah, which he goes with big Yisodos. It's called Ibid Yad Hazak. It's two Yerushin, Yad Mitzrayim, Yad Hazak. I don't remember which one the sefer is called. And they have his drushes, which again, they take the kernel of the ideas from somewhere else, they digest it and give it over. The Ramchal was another person who did it his way, and he wrote Sfarim on different levels. The problem is, it's very hard, all the Sfarim come from the same place, but in a sefer that's written more pashut, you have a hard time trying to figure out where it's coming from. It's just written in very simple language. To understand Derech Hashem, you have to usually know the Sfarim it's coming from, and then you can work way backwards. But I think if I had to choose Rabbi Dalia as a sefer like that, Reb Dessler he had different kufas. He was into a lot of Hasidic Sfarim and quasi-Kabbalah Sfarim. He's quoted them in certain kufas like, and he stopped quoting them. He would just use the ideas, digest it, and give it over. So depending on whatever it is, he would. But that I think is the first engine. If you can't understand it, meaning you can't understand it, meaning it doesn't ring. I'll tell you the truth. If I was doing an Avera, and someone told me, how many worlds you're destroying, would I really care? I'll tell you the truth, no. As I told you, there's these infinite worlds in some higher sphere that being a certain area. If I'm taking my consequence with Gehenna, those worlds, I have no problem destroying them. So it has to speak to you. The idea has to resonate with you for it to be, to see that you actually got the idea. It has to be something that resonates with you. Yeah. What's your name?
Michael from Massachusetts.
You don't even claim a city. You're like a statewide.
From Western Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if we sort of have this idea of maybe this Kabbalah being a more Lopianistic approach, a more, let's say, Pnimi approach to Torah. What's the Rosh HaYeshiva opinion on how our Jolie from Lita, Chaim, Grizz, Ron Cutler from America, sort of very much focused on Gemara being and Rambam being, and didn't involve themselves so much in the Kabbalah world? Were they too focused on the Yashi side of Torah, Chas v'Shalom?
So first of all, I think you yourself hinted at the answer. They found a depth in Torah, in the so-called dry Gemara, that hadn't been discovered. Arguably, Reb Chaim Brisker is an amkus in halacha that had been not discovered until he came around. The idea was very the same, and there were a lot of parallels. The very deep type as far as saying yeshivas, you also got kids where they say these svaras, and it sounds flashy, but they don't understand it. There's been sort of pushback. What does the Gemara say? What does it say? Hazanish was extremely upset they don't learn Marsha. He said Marsha is the aleph of Iyun. In other words, because it's nuts and bolts. If you didn't think of Marsha's kasha, you skimmed over the Gemara. If you had looked at the nuts and bolts of the Gemara well, once you have that, now you can start asking yourself, so what's the concept behind it? But the same type of flow of having a hierarchy from the pshat to the conceptual existed there. Secondly, people have different opinions of whether Chazon Ish is this Torah, whether Kabbalah or not. Different stories, one way or another. The one thing was clear. There was an extraordinary keda in that world that it's not to be made to the masses. Where Hasidus welcomed introducing the concept and thought it was good. There was a very posh leader who saw Elia Weintraub, who lived in Neibach, passed away a few years ago. He had groups where they learned his time and so on. Rav Shach made 3 strict conditions with him before he did it. He couldn't do it in Neibach itself. You have to go like that tikva. He couldn't do it during Seder hours, and it could not be public. In other words, the downside of making it public, you cheapen it, and again, you debase the Chacham itself. And every little kid is talking, I always tell the story. I grew up on the Lower East Side. I lived right next door to us. Next building was a Chassidish kid, a piano kid. He went to Chela, I went to school. For those of us who know what that was. And some people here also went back. And so I went to school, and he came, so they learned Gemara early. He tells, so he comes home once. We must have been 7 at the time. And he says, I learned all the Zion Rekiyah. I was very, very jealous. Nah, it can't be. Yes, he did. We learned. Okay, what's the first Rekiyah? First Rekiyah is this. The full. The whole second, third, I kept on up in the ante. You got it, pull the 7th. Said, okay, smarty pants, and what's on top of the Rekiyah? So he thinks of it, and he says, the Kisar covered. Okay, and what's on top of the Kisar covered? Hashem. And what's on top of Hashem? So he thought. He says he has an attic where he stores his Pesach dishes. And now, I found that to be a very satisfactory answer, because I knew there's nothing on top of that attic. I knew that, the highest attic. But, so what happens, so this kid will always understand it very, very childlike. They put these against young boys learning Iyun. When they weren't ready, he said he learned Baba Kama at a very young age, and his understanding of Baba Kama has always been rather childish. That's the way he describes it. But the point is, these concepts do not belong in the. My father was a kind of Rafa. Rabbi Finkel is a Mir Yeshiva. I knew he had some sperm in a certain place. No one ever saw him learning. I heard we learned. It's the same idea. Whether he learned about Kabbalah, I have no idea. But that he kept it slack and it was not part of table conversation. Was very, very strict. We once had a guest who wanted to try to tease my father out about it. So he said, so this guest said, he asked a question like, how is Yaakov allowed to do what he did with the sheep? Wasn't it stealing, this and that? So he said, his father didn't answer him, so he said, he heard that of the Kabbalah, the neshamas, the sheep had the neshamas of Klal Yisrael in it, the Shishim, Vibur, and so on and so forth. So my father, without batting eyelids, said, so how is he allowed to steal them? Like, what does that have to do with the question? There's Hilchas Zela and Gneva. Hilchas sheep with neshamas doesn't belong in that world. And it was considered to be something wrong to bring to public forums there. So there was a second reason why they stayed away. There may have been, again, people, there are stories about Kanishta, about Biskraf. It is part of that world's ethos that this Chelek Torah stays locked. For those people who can know and need to know, they know where to find the keys. And anyone else, it should not be made public. Maybe one other question. Yeah, what you make? Yeah.
Some of the notions he was talking about, the different Madrigas, and you just mentioned about how the keys to a different world. Just for conceptual understanding, is it that there are separate worlds and each one sort of functions as worlds? Yes, you said that the world into another world, but is it that everything below a certain world is contained within the other world, or is it that meaning through a deep understanding of the other world, you understand the lower things?
So let me give you a marshal for the marshal, so that way maybe we'll be able to. Somebody sits in a factory and produces widgets of some sort. A factory was one that used to make things before everything was online and virtual. They had to make things at some place. So you have a place where they're manufacturing coats. And one day I produced 10 coats, one day 13 coats, one day 20 coats, one day 5 coats, and so on and so forth. So I want to explain how many coats, how does the factory do it? So one way is I pile up the coats, each day the amount of coats are made, and I have 10 piles. A second way to do it is with a graph. No coats, but a line that goes up and down and so on. The next way to do it is with a formula, an algorithm. How it varies. Now, that's going from the physical to the conceptual. It's the same thing, but it's not the same thing at all. When I say, look at the formula, what's that got to wear the coats? All I see is numbers and squiggles. But conceptual is, it's about something. When I think of justice, so there is the specific cases. A did wrong and he gets punishment. B did something wrong and he gets this, C gets that. And then there's the idea of suffering the consequence of what he did, and the feedback of the evil that it caused. These are worlds that are increasingly, they are layered on each other, and if a person gets it right in one place, there's a Sefer from Radzina. He lists a lot of places, he lists 30 some odd places, where the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim was uncannily similar to Kabbalah. Now, almost no one thinks the Rambam had access to Kabbalah. But since the Rambam's ideas were profoundly correct in the world that he addressed, they're profoundly correct in the next world. A friend of mine was sitting in a conversation, and one person told him that he heard that everything the Brisker Rav said in the Sefer on Chumash is Oisgehalt Api Kabbalah. It's correct Api Kabbalah. So the second person, the person who was talking to, said, wow, Brisker was such a big person. My friend said, no, Torah is so big. In other words, it wasn't that Brisker Rav worked out Kabbalah and then he wrote it in Pshat. Even if it was Kabbalah, that wasn't him. But Torah is such that if you hit it exactly dead center in a place, then it goes all the way through. Just like, if a person understands how the formula applies to the codes and the picture of the graph that he sees, then it comes together. Some people don't get it. That's why people find math very hard, because it's divorced from reality. But for the person with that type of mind, where you can see the different layers, so these are worlds within worlds within worlds. If you have, depending on the depth of your neshama, depending on how you see, that's how you go. If somebody will ask the question for me. Oh, that's okay, we'll take that. Yeah. Yeah. So, in a few brief words, there was a book I put out about a year and a half ago called Mentor for Life. It was meant to address, it's not an advertising to buy it, it doesn't have any books, and I'm selling it here, it's not, but it's a safer book that tries to address the transition from a very learning-intensive, coal-focused world, which is the world I come from, to trying to find meaning in an outside world and so on. So every world has its challenges. I think there is a point of significance that applies across the board, and it's as follows. There's a statement that's an oversimplification, and it goes like this. Christians believe that physical activities are bad. We believe everything can have push in it, and so on and so forth. The physical is good, the marriage is good, this is good, that's good, and so on and so forth. That's a statement. That statement is fatal because it's oversimplified. Let's take a simple example. So we understand that fasting is kind of a ruchnis activity. Your kippur everybody gets. The Christians, the Jews, fasting as a religious activity, understand. Let's try eating. You'll find some people that will sit and gorge themselves on bowl after bowl of cholent. Would you call that a very ruchnistic person? Would you say, wow, in your mother, if you eat one bowl of cholent so holy, if you eat 5 bowls of cholent, it's kaddish, 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 kaddish. I think most of us would intuitively not, unless we eat a lot of cholent, we would intuitively not. What? we would, that's very spiritual, but sorry, it's not fun. But let's understand it. Let's take a l'chaim as an example. A person's had a difficulty with a child and should have been long and hard and difficult road, and finally Baruch Hashem, he or she found a match, and they sit down and make a l'chaim. Most of the time, you see a profound beauty, something actually very, very special. It's a very spiritual experience. You also go to Hasna and you see a bunch of teenagers hanging around the bar, drinking. You see a very profane experience. We can take physical things, and we need to take physical things, and make them ruchnis. It's not automatic. Eating and drinking in the right mode, in the right mindset. So just like when you make a l'chaim for a special simcha, you take out a special amount of wine because it's a vehicle to celebrate something. So a person who's really caught up with Kedusha Shabbos, his eating will look different, and it'll have that flavor to it. We go through life, and there are different opinions about how much involvement, and should we stick to very, very Jewish, like, run your local grocery store so we're not affected all around, or no, that's not Bible, we need to be able to see different, many different approaches. All of them have value, and all of them have their issues. But no matter what it is, even if we tell somebody, you can enjoy a career with your talents to the fullest, but that's not who I am. So if I can be a lawyer, do very well at that, my mapus is not a great lawyer who's also Jewish. And it means there will come times when you need to make tough choices. You know, there are people who, the great competition, the Olympic competition, whatever it was on a Shabbos. And I say, you know what? That's being a Yid means that even if I could win and be world famous, Shabbos is more important. That those type of sacrifices are, you know, kind of once a lifetime. Day in, day out. I do things because I take off a day or I'm supposed to take off the halacha. People are not happy with it. But, you know, as long as it's done Yeshiva, you help your beforehand and you make up, you know, so on. I think understanding it's not automatic. To make our lives that are full of avodas Hashem, means we replace ourselves. I can have many job offers. One job offer gives me more time to learn to daven. One job offer gives more time to do for kids. One job offer means much more money. Maybe I have to do for stuff and so on. Or maybe I just like a lot more money. You know, those are decisions that to apply that understanding to life, that the values I have are going to be applied, it means making decisions every single day of my life. What takes priority, what's important, what's not important, is going to be how to do it. So I think the concept that all of life is a challenge and an opportunity to mold life to be an Ishal Akin, then Torah, is true for everyone. Different groups, because of the different emphasis, come with different challenges and different advantages. But at the end of the day, if God gives us a life, it's always challenging, and every challenge is an opportunity. Any weight that you lift that's heavy builds your muscles. You shouldn't lift weights that are too heavy for you, and you shouldn't content yourself with something that's very easy to do. But if you meet the appropriate challenges in the appropriate way, a person develops and turns into a different person. I have to go now, I'm sorry. I have my challenges. And Bez Hashem, it's a very special group. I know from always the boys that come from us and just listening to the questions and discussion, Bez Hashem should be very, very matzliach and grow, and everybody should be a Torah for life. The goal is applicable to every single person.